Hi, this is a fourth section, and in this section we'll be looking at the Spring data. So this is one of the most important concepts when building microservices in Spring. We need to have a good data access layer and we need to code it properly. And in this video we will implement it. So in this section we will define what the Spring data is. We'll be defining entities and repository for accessing data. And in this video I will be defining entities in Spring data. Firstly, we define a model class, travel, that is an entity. We will create a Spring repository and we'll be implementing custom query on that repository class. So our travel application needs to have a model object that is a travel. Travel has an user ID field that is a string, source of our travel, and destination. So we have three business fields that are important for our domain, business domain. To make it an entity from our travel business model object, we need to annotate it with an entity annotation. It will create an entity for us. Every entity in Spring Data needs to have an ID field. So we need to define a long ID field that will be created by Spring Data. So each time we will create a new travel and save it to database, the ID field will be created by the repository class. And it needs to be annotated with an ID field, denoting that it's an ID, of course, and we want to have a generated value here. So this will be an generated long value. And let's implement our travel repository. It will be an interface that extends another interface that is a CRUD repository. This is from a Spring Data framework. This is a very useful and important interface because it ships with a lot of useful methods. We need to define that object that will be stored is an travel and it should be an entity, and also we need to define a type of an ID of that object. And CRUD repository has a lot of useful methods, like for example save, find by ID, find all, count, delete, and other, and they are already implemented in Spring framework. So we only need to use that CRUD repository and then we have all methods available for us. This is very useful and we don't need to write a lot of code. But sometimes we need to define some custom queries. So this is the simplest queries that we need to find by an user ID field. Because CRUD repository will have a find by ID method, but that ID will be of type long. And this is not so useful for us. We need to find a travels for a specific user ID. So we need to select T from travel T, where T user ID is equal to our param, and it will return list of travels. It could be, of course, empty list, but if the user has more than 0 travels, then it will return list of those travels here. Sometimes we also in our travel website want to find travels by destination. So let's say that we want to find all travels that destination for them is Barcelona. Then we can implement our custom query, but this time we are querying using destination field. And this also needs to be a param. Once we define our travel repository, we can inject it in our code. And we will be testing it in the next video.